Good evening, everyone. My name's Dr. Mike Masding. I'm National Clinical Director of the UK Foundation Programme Office. I'm also a consultant physician. And I'd really like to welcome you to this evening's webinar, which has been suggested and thought up by our UKFPO fellows and some foundation doctor representatives around the country to really give people an idea of the opportunities that may be available in the foundation programme to enhance your CV, to develop your skills away from the clinical arena, and to help yourself develop as a doctor. In particular, I'd like to welcome those of you who are just about to apply for a foundation programme to start in August next year. To those of you who are just about to start your foundation programme in a week or so's time, and also, of course, any foundation doctors who've come to this webinar and faculty too. You're all very welcome indeed. Really, what we're going to talk about are the different types of foundation programme, the standard 2-year programme, specialised foundation programmes, foundation priority programmes. But what we'd really like to emphasise is that there are opportunities for all foundation programme doctors, wherever you may be, to take part in audit, research, and leadership and management opportunities which become available. Some of these you might have to actually go out and look for. You may have to ask senior doctors like myself what opportunities are available, but they're things that really come in very handy when you're trying to think about what career you'd like as a doctor in the future, and indeed for building up your CV so you can achieve those aims. In the UKFPO, we really value the representatives from the regions who come to our meetings. They feed back about what is going on in foundation programs throughout the country and allow us to work on developing the foundation program in all 4 nations. The work of the representatives is very much appreciated, and I hope that they feel that the role is valuable too. A lot of this will be fleshed out now by the UKFPO fellows and Harriet too, who has come to talk about the work of a rep. So I'll hand over to our fellows, Dasha and Jeff A, to talk further about the opportunities that are available in the foundation programme. I hope you enjoy the webinar.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeffy. I'm one of the FY2 doctors, as well as one of the 2 UKFPO fellows. I'll allow Dasha to introduce herself while I get the slides on the screen.
Thank you so much, Jeffy, and thank you, Mike, once again. Welcome everybody today. So hopefully we will answer all your questions and provide you some more information and tips and tricks as to how to make the most of your foundation years. So I'm Dasha. I am a specialised foundation year 2 doctor, and I did my SFP in the Northwest in leadership. And I'm also the UKFPO fellow alongside Jeffy. So we're going to be giving you some tops, tips and advice, and I'll hand back over to Jeffy.
Yep, thank you, Dasha. Just wanted to make sure that my slides are visible. Thumbs up. All right, so just as Mike had kind of briefly outlined, there are different types of foundation programs. Most of us would be on the traditional 2-year foundation program or standard foundation program. There are also some other ones that perhaps you would have applied for specifically on Oriel. And you would include the Foundation Priority Program, which is quite an umbrella term for lots of different types of programs. And then you also have the now renamed Specialized Foundation Program, which has also quite a few subtypes under there. So we'll go into a couple of those in this talk. And feel free to ask more questions at the end if you're on a specific type of foundation program and you'd like to know a little bit more about that. So, but as Mike had also correctly sort of said that no matter what type of foundation program you're on, at the end of the day, there are an abundance of opportunities, whether it's educational or leadership, etc., research, audit opportunities that you should make the most out of. I would say as a foundation doctor, day to day, every day at work is an educational opportunity, isn't it? I feel like 5 years of medical school, you're spent building those basic building blocks and the foundation of clinical practice. And when you transition into the hospital or the community, you learn a lot of, I guess, real life skills and the practicalities of applying that clinical know-how. So there's that sort of day-to-day informal learning, if you will. There are formal educational opportunities that you all should be having wherever you are in the country, such as every week or every 2 weeks, you should be having mandatory training. In my case, in my hospital, it's a half day every week. Some hospitals have it 1 day every 2 weeks. So it's quite variable how it's implemented, but you should be getting that formal training where you get to sit with other foundation trainees and have a session of learning. There are all these mandatory training courses such as ALS or equivalent. If you might have something a bit more specific, if you're rotating onto a specific specialty, that should also be made available to you. There's lots of e-learning modules that probably some of them will be mandatory as part of your induction. Some of them will be more of a departmental requirement. And others will be also really helpful in terms of supplementing your learning. Those are usually found on platforms such as e-learning for health, Turas, etc. Outside of these things, you can also attend the hospital grand round, which is also a great opportunity for you to present any audit QI projects. And this is usually attended by a mixed audience, not just foundation doctors, but also other healthcare professionals. Whichever rotation you also might get some departmental teaching, which is always very beneficial. You would also sometimes get regional workshops or study days, depending on what type of foundation program you're on. So if this is available to you as well, do make the most out of it. And of course, every foundation trainee does have a study budget and an allocated amount of study leave that you can use for things like taster weeks, as well as courses and to attend conferences that are mappable to your foundation program curriculum. So this is just a whistle-stop tour through some of the educational opportunities available in foundation training. I'll hand over to Dasha, and if you have any questions about any of what I've just mentioned, feel free to ask at the end of this presentation too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. So moving on to leadership opportunities and maybe in general opportunities throughout the foundation programme, I think it's important to re-emphasise the fact that these are available to anybody. You don't need to be on a priority programme or on a specialised foundation programme to go and seek out opportunities, to create a programme that interests you and explore other options that are available. So for example, leadership opportunities, there's a range, and you can get involved from something local within your hospital or within your peer group, where you represent your colleagues as a foundation year 1 rep or a foundation year 2 rep, or maybe as a resident doctor forum committee member. You can also feed in more into regional, and that will be discussed by Charlotte, but actually you can be involved in other areas. So there are always teaching opportunities within the hospitals. You can contact your clinical teaching fellows who deliver teaching to undergraduate trainees and students. You can get involved with that as a leadership perspective. You can also just be proactive and contact your medical director or a head of department and say, hi, I'm interested in leadership. Are there any projects I can get involved in? And that's what I did when I first joined my hospital. I reached out, I was involved with my medical director. I worked in various improvement projects in the departments I was in. And again, it's the freedom that you have to explore whatever you'd like to do. Official opportunities, so regional reps, Harriet will discuss later. There's also the UKFPO fellowship, which is something Jeffrey and I have been doing this year, and we have had official timings. We get 1 day a week to support and represent the foundation doctors across all 4 nations. So again, that's more of an official formal role. That's something you can apply to in your F2 year. So keep an eye out for that. There's also additional opportunities that are external, and there's available courses. So again, you can do postgraduate certificates in medical leadership as well as in education. You can explore things like the NHS Leadership Academy. There's particularly local ones such as the Northwest Leadership Academy. I did external courses with the Healthcare Leadership Academy. There's a whole range of things that you can do. It's just finding those opportunities. You can get involved with the colleges, and maybe, for example, ACIT will have foundation doctor reps. There's many different things that you can do. It's just being proactive. And the same goes for research as well. So there are people who are always looking for a helping hand, want people to get involved, and you can just reach out to the people, whether it's somebody in your department and saying, are there any research opportunities? There may also be research opportunities in other departments. So if you have a particular area of interest, it's contacting somebody. And often, actually, it's often useful to contact maybe the academic clinical fellows in your hospital. There'll be the ACF consultant leads as well. So it's reaching out to people and just creating those connections, creating those networks, because that is how we progress and develop and make the most of our foundation role. So moving on to the Specialised Foundation Programme, there are 3 different types. And within the Specialised Foundation Programme, there's research, and that's the most commonly known one that everyone says, what research project are you doing? If you say you're doing SFP, everyone always says, what are you going to do for your research project? And of course, you can do that. But again, you have the flexibility to learn and explore, and you have a dedicated period of time. So in some places, you get a 4-month block in your F2, and others, it's spread out over your 2 years of foundation or 1 year, maybe an F2. It depends on the hospital, but you have a set period of time that's dedicated. And again, you can evidence and do things relating to research, but it doesn't always have to end in a publication. That would be the ideal goal, but there are so many learning steps along the way. For example, you could learn about ethical approval, and when you're putting in an application, you can get involved in the grant writing, and of course, as I said, the publications, the presentations, and the prizes. Aside from research, there is also the education pathway, so for SFP. And again, there's a range of things you can do. You can, of course, do research within medical education and present it and maybe get a prize. But actually, you can attend the courses, as I mentioned, as a PG cert. You can consider undergraduate or postgraduate training and consider where you can get involved in that. Can you develop a course or some teaching sessions? Can this be within your hospital? Can this be within your region? Can it be something national? You don't always have to reinvent the wheel and think of something new. There may be courses already happening. It's how do you get involved? You can get involved, you can develop something as a side track. Kind of the list is endless. You can learn about giving feedback and develop collecting the feedback. So if you've delivered courses or teaching, whether to undergraduate or postgraduates, you get that feedback back and learn and develop it further. There's the curriculum writing. So again, you can get involved with the undergraduate medical schools. So I did that when I was on my SFP and helped with developing content and linking it to their curriculum as well, seeing where it's relevant, what's maybe you're rewriting a curriculum. There's the course development, which I've mentioned, and lesson planning. So researching into it, what are the different types of lessons and teaching that you can deliver? Is it bedside teaching? Is it more of a lecture format? Is it small group teaching? Is it more of a simulation approach? It's exploring what your options are. And I've mentioned publications and prizes. And finally, there's the leadership stream within the Specialised Foundation Programme. And again, a whole range of things that you can do. So as I said, you can do courses. You can actually keep a logbook of the things you have observed. So you might be doing some mentoring, working with a medical director, the CMO in your hospital, learning new things, attending different meetings, learning about governance. You might be developing or improving care pathways. This may be linking to quality improvement projects and audits that you have noticed that are happening. You've organised yourself. You are part of a larger team. You can actually be involved in writing a business case and suggesting maybe some cost efficiency measures for your department. I've mentioned mentoring, I've mentioned the shadowing, and just reflecting on your experiences. It's a fantastic period of time to have some time set aside to explore such opportunities. But if you aren't on an SFP program, you can still get involved. You just have to be a little bit more time savvy. So as I move on to the next slide, this all links very well together to the fact that you do need to be really time savvy, and you need to be proactive no matter what you're doing, whether you are doing an SFP, whether you're just doing a standard foundation program. Particularly in your SFP, you need to be very organized and think, if I have my 4-month block, for example, will I be writing everything up? I need to be ready to start going. If you're doing a research project or an education project or something, you need to be to hit the ground running when the time comes. So you need to probably prepare a lot of your proposals, your ethical approvals in advance. So kind of consider those things earlier in the year during your maybe foundation year 1. Consider your timings in general for if you're signing up for courses or for a postgraduate certificate. So you need to be savvy. And again, just consider what your options are. The clock is ticking. We do only have 2 years and the time does absolutely fly by. So be proactive, get involved. And again, there's no harm in asking, there's no harm in trying to get more involved and develop yourself. So I'm now going to pass back on to Jeffe, and she's going to talk about Enhance for us.
Thank you, Dasha, for that wonderful presentation on the Specialized Foundation Program. So I will continue on to briefly outline the Enhance program. Now, I'm not sure if anyone in the audience has been allocated or applied for an Enhance post. And you may be wondering and scratching your head, what is all this about? What exactly is expected of me? And am I going to be treated differently to other foundation trainees with additional ARCP requirements? So I appreciate that, because I was where you were 2 years ago. And so I would try my best to briefly outline this. But of course, if you have any further questions, once again, please do pass them on in the Q&A session. So the Enhanced program, or the Enhanced Generalist program, is a type of foundation priority program. It has been piloted a couple years ago. I think I was the second cohort to undergo this program. And the whole point of this program is to encourage foundation doctors to develop more generalist skills early on in our medical career. Now, this is not to say that it's necessarily encouraging us to become general practitioners. It's more the fact that whichever specialty you go into, you would need these sort of skills, especially in our modern and increasingly complex NHS. So there are different types of enhanced programs, but the overarching aim is to have an appreciation, to understand and engage with these themes, and derive from these themes, these 6 modules. So I won't go into a lot of detail about this, because this is something that you'll get familiar with if you have a look at the workbook. But essentially, throughout these 2 years, you should have opportunities to learn more about person-centered care, which is different from patient-centered care, and it's something that I've learned as well. It's about appreciating that our patients are becoming more complex, and they have lots of multi-morbidities, and it's important to consider all these things when we are treating them, so that we're not just treating the symptom or that current presentation, but thinking a bit more widely about their other issues as well. It's about appreciating the fact that the NHS that we work in at the moment is increasingly complex in terms of pathways and protocol, and being able to help patients and lead others to help bridge those gaps in the system is really important as well. It's important for us as doctors to have an appreciation of the wider community that we serve, thinking about population health and how we can have a bigger impact on that population we're serving. Once again, this is something to think about if you're trying to design a quality improvement project and you want to make it impactful. These are some themes that you can think about. And of course, social justice and health equity is all about thinking about this wider social determinants of health, the root causes of the root causes, and how we as foundation doctors can start thinking about these things as we progress along our career. And environmental sustainability is important. It's not something that we are necessarily taught a lot in medical school, but this is an opportunity for you to learn more about this and design a quality improvement project if you're interested in that. So that's pretty much all that I would touch on. And just to say, there are 2 main types of enhanced programs. One is Enhanced Enable, which is available to all foundation doctors. So you don't have to be in this enhanced post to get access to these learning resources. And if you complete the modules or evidence engagement with any of these modules, you do get a certificate. And if you complete all 6 modules, you get a contextual leadership certificate, which does count for points in terms of specialty training. So that's the Enhanced Enable. It's more self-directed in that you would have to be proactive in reading up these learning resources, approaching your educational supervisor to see how you can link your current rotation, link some of the learning outcomes with what is available in your specific department, for example. There may be some opportunity depending on where you are. And sorry, just to also preface, Enhance is currently an England-only program at the moment, and I imagine over the years it will probably be disseminated throughout the other 4 nations as well. But yeah, I should have sort of prefaced that from the start. But yes, so depending on where you are in England, you may have some opportunities to attend some training courses as well related to Enhance. The difference between Enhance Enable and Explore, which is the second one, is that in Explore, if you are in an Enhance Explore post, you should be getting an average of 1 to 1.5 days a week allocated to a community-based placement. For me, I had this community placement in FY2, whereas in FY1, I was still based in the hospital. But I'm happy to talk more about my Enhance experience at the end if anyone is interested, but I won't dwell too much about it. But yes, so this is the Enhance program sort of whistle stop. I will stop sharing my screen and I will hand over to Harriet.
Hi everyone, my name's Harriet. I'm one of the regional representatives in the Kent Surrey Sussex region. I'm just going to try and get my slides up for all of you to see. Just bear with me as I show. Hopefully you can see my slides. So this presentation is a little bit about my role as a regional representative in Kent Surrey Sussex. It hopefully will inspire some of you to apply for a regional representative post, but if that's not your thing, that's absolutely okay too. It might just give you a bit insight into what our roles are, so if you ever come to us with any questions, you know what we do with the information or the feedback that you provide, and it also just gives you a little bit of insight into how the feedback comes from those of us as foundation doctors all the way up to the UKFPO team. So really our role as regional representatives and us as UKFPO is really to be able to get the feedback from you guys, you as FY1 and FY2. The way that feedback is normally collected from all of you across the UK is normally you would feed back to your local representatives. So those are those that are at your individual hospital trusts. For example, I am currently at the Royal Surrey County Hospital, so that is where I, as a foundation doctor, would be giving my feedback to, normally in meetings or via the WhatsApp groups that are available. These local representatives then collect all of your feedback together, and often they speak to their hospital leads. So these are the chairmen of their hospitals, and essentially people would highlight what the problems are that you're facing. Often they might be able to do things on a more local basis, such as help give you support with car parking, looking at how your rotas are working, any issues that you might be having with your bleeps, and hopefully giving you support as a foundation team. You then speak to the local representatives if there's any issues that go beyond some of these factors, such as looking into the curriculum. They then come to us as a regional representative doctors. We cover each of the different deaneries across the UK. So for example, I am a representative of the Kent, Surrey and Sussex region. Scotland is a region, Northern Ireland, Wales is a region, and across each of England, they have the different regions too. We collect feedback from the local representatives via WhatsApp, and we also maybe try and have meetings. We in Kent Surrey Sussex try and have team meetings. Other parts of the UK might have more in-person collection perspectives too. In regard to this, we then try and provide to get the feedback, and we speak directly to the foundation doctors to get feedback from them. But also we speak to our deanery representatives as well, such as we have meetings with the Kent Surrey Sussex deaneries representatives too, to be able to see if there's any patterns, such as if there's any issues with people that maybe move between hospitals and how the whole allocation process works generally as well. There's also communications between the leads of the hospitals and the deans within each of these areas too. We then like to give feedback to the UKFPO representatives, such as Dasha and JV in this kind of context. We have a WhatsApp chat, and we also attend 3 meetings throughout the year as well, and we'll be able to share any kind of feedback that are. So from the foundation doctors, there is feedback all the way up to the UKFPO team. They might be able to identify common themes such as problems with teaching, or if anyone has any issues, if there's any issues, for example, in the enhanced programme, so that they're able to give that feedback backwards. As regional representatives, we also have roles outside of this feedback process. For example, we're a point of contact. I, for example, am part of the Kent Surrey Sussex Incoming Foundation Doctor Group, so I'm answering questions for those. I contribute to the monthly bulletins that we have in the Kent Surrey Sussex region, and I'm also there as a point of contact to really try and emphasise the GMC and the destination surveys to make sure that the feedback is collected from that perspective too. We also really try and help support people by attending in-person hospital reviews. For example, if there are any issues flagged on the GMC survey about particular places within the UK, I've been invited to go alongside my deans to go to specific hospitals, see what the issue is and how we can better support the foundation doctors there. I've also been part of the pre-allocation panel, so that's for those that are applying into the foundation to be able to give my insight as a doctor into who might need to maybe be pre-allocated to particular regions, which is really exciting too. We also look to try and help improve the way that everything is run. For example, with all of my connections and networks across the UK, by being a regional representative, I was able to do a research project looking into the insights of deaf and hard of hearing NHS workers across the UK. I was able to present this at one of the UKFPO meetings as well, and really feel like I had an impact as a regional representative on what is going forwards into the next doctors to really try and help make things better. I've also attended a UK postgraduate training review to express my opinions and the doctors within the Kent Surrey Sussex region's opinions on how we think the training pathway is and suggestions on how we think it can improve. And have most recently, we've all been invited and been involved in the GMC medical licensing assessment content map. So as you can see, for this voluntary role, we don't get paid for doing this edition. It is something that we do in our free time, but it is something that I have felt really passionate about. It's something I felt that I've gained a lot from. And essentially, hopefully, some of you might be able to be stepping into these roles going forwards and getting something from it too. So I'm hopefully going to stop sharing. Thank you very much. And yes, we're now going on to the Q&A portion of this webinar. Please make sure you're answering the questions, and I'll pass it over to Mike to explain a little bit about this.
Mike, you're on mute.
Somebody unmuted me and then I muted myself. Some of you wish I had done that again, but there you go. Thanks very much, Harriet, Dasha, Jeff A. Examples of excellent foundation program doctors. And one of the great things about my job is meeting foundation doctors in different settings who I know will go on to have really successful and fruitful careers as senior doctors in whatever specialties they choose. So really interesting talks. Something that really struck me, and I'm going to I'd just like you to expand on this, Jeff A, is that when you started right at the start of your talk, you said every day is a learning opportunity. I absolutely love that. But what sort of things could foundation doctors do in their day-to-day work to ensure that they're learning? Because it's very different from learning from a textbook or virtual learning environment that you do in the in medical school.
Yep, I think that when I mean that every day is a learning opportunity, I mean you may have learned a lot of textbook knowledge in terms of conditions, but I think nothing prepares you when you work in the department, because it's all about learning the systems, the protocols, understanding the politics of the department as well. And this is something that, you know, medical school wouldn't have taught you, but it's important to learn these things quickly. And even though it's only a 4-month or for some of you 6-month rotation, it is important to make sure that you are respectful, you are polite, but also understanding that there are certain, you know, ways of how they work that you can't necessarily influence, but you're there to learn and there to navigate with that open-mindedness and curiosity. So that's, I think, what I meant by learning on the job. And I think for me, throughout these 2 years, I have had to, you know, make sure that I always go to work with that sort of mindset. So, and I always do turn to my peers and my seniors for feedback, especially, you know, when I've gone to see patients or I've maybe encountered a particularly challenging situation and walked away feeling like not sure if I handled that very well. You know, could I get some feedback? And most of the time I've always had, you know, good response from my seniors. They've always been very patient with me, telling me how I could do better, signposting me to any learning resources. And so I would say the 2 years of foundation training is not necessarily to make you a pediatrician or an obs and gynae, sort of trainee, but it is to learn the fundamentals of most of these specialties, the breadth of specialties, so that, you know, once you've graduated, if you will, from these 2 years, you can confidently, you know, perform that initial assessment for any patient arriving with that sort of common presentation, if you will.
Okay, thank you. Dasha, what's your thoughts about learning on the job? How do you do that outside the sort of classroom, if you like?
Definitely. I think, as Jeffe said, we are always learning, and this is probably the first time you will actually be in a hospital and responsible for patients. And of course, there's the people kind of around you and everyone to fall back on, and the consultants and the registrars, but you do feel for the first time that kind of you are the person, and you are starting to make some decisions and be responsible for care, and you're going to take that, do that blood or put that cannula in or whatever it is. And there's learning, and like you have been building for 5 or 4 or 6 years of medical school to become a doctor, and this is the first time kind of you are out there and you are thrown into this new place, and it's a whole new world to learn in, and it's scary, but of course there is support. I think that's the most important thing to remember looking back on it now. It's terrifying, but you are supported and people are there to help you out. All you have to do is ask, because as my very senior consultant said to me, he said, I don't want to be the last person to know about a problem. Tell me earlier on and we will deal with it together, because we don't want to wait until something backfires later down the line. Let's do it together. We are there as a team. Learning wise, you have to be proactive and you have to share your interest in learning. And for example, you may not go into a specialty thinking that's what you want to do, but you might be converted. I, for a very long time, was surgically inclined, was very keen. And of course, you do take those steps and you say, I'm really interested. I want to go to theatres. How do I find some time, or go to a clinic? You can negotiate. You can split the load between your colleagues. One time you will go if it's a bit quieter. Take those opportunities. If there's nothing going on, go and find something to do. Go along, tag along, learn to put an NG tube in, or tag along and go learn to scrub into theatres and suture some wounds, or go and see how the SHO is taking referrals,
Okay.
or dealing with the admission. So you are constantly learning, and you can shadow and see how other people are doing things. You can learn from your colleagues. We all have different opportunities from that perspective. We've all come from different places. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. Harriet, anything to add?
I would add as well the importance of actually using your Horace. I know in Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and potentially other parts of the UK, you might have something a little bit different. But for me, Horace is essentially where we use in order to be able to document our learning and our progress as a foundation doctor. It's also called an e-portfolio as well, that some of you might be more familiar in terminology-wise. So Horace is essentially a way that I'm able to reflect, and I feel reflection for me, we talk about it a lot in medical school, but again, as a foundation doctor, reflection is really an important way that I have been able to learn and been able to progress, and actually also track my progression. Sometimes as a doctor, life gets busy. I think that's something that all of you are probably going to be expecting, and in reality, it definitely does happen. But by being able to take even just 5 minutes a day to just be able to go and reflect and just write down something I have learned, something I have seen, then now looking back at the end of my foundation year 2s on all of these different things that I have reflected on, you actually really are able to identify, wow, you've actually learned a lot. You've actually been able to gather all of these different bits of learning points throughout the 2 years, and you've really been able to shape myself as a doctor. going back to when I just started at the beginning of F1, I felt like I didn't know anything. Yes, I had done 5 years of medical school and a master's degree, but I felt stepping into the ward that I was really scared. But actually, I knew so much more than I thought I did. And now, looking at all of the evidence of that, it really shows just how much you've progressed as individuals from the start of university and even now through to the last 2 years of Foundation 2. So don't be afraid if you don't know anything. There's definitely loads of opportunities to learn, and you will learn, and just make sure you keep it documented, as it really does show how much you are and how good of a doctor you will be.
All really good tips. My tip would be to look up. Don't always have your head down. There's lots and lots to learn from looking at experienced doctors, experienced nursing staff, how they talk to patients, how they talk to each other. Sometimes you'll see some things where you don't like how they talk to the patient, or they don't like how to talk to each other, how they're talking to each other. Learn from that. Don't do it in the future. All experiences are really learning, but look up, watch experienced doctors, see how they deal with things, see how they talk to patients, and that's a really that's a really important learning, because it's very easy to just get totally taken up with the day-to-day work, the nitty-gritty, the writing in the notes or on the computer. But actually, there's a lot more to being a doctor than that, and it's important to just keep always watching people and learning from them. Right, some questions for Jeff A about Enhance. First of all, can you just re-emphasise the? Well, firstly, I will emphasise the UKFPO National Director that Enhance is at the moment only available in England. Now, it may be taken up in the other nations, but at the moment it is an NHS England endeavour. However, I think it's important that all foundation doctors understand that your training is a general training program. It's about the skills that all doctors need, and you will specialise later. But Jeff A, could you just expand on the difference between the two different types of Enhance, because a few people have asked questions about that, and then I'll ask you a few more questions.
Yep, certainly. So I am on Enhance Explore. Enhance Explore is a foundation priority program. So as part of this program, when I was in FY1, I got 1.5 days rotated in during my surgical block to be working on the surgical aspect. When I was working in the geriatrics department, I had 1.5 days a week scheduled on the frailty aspect. To see patients and learn about all the modules that I had just mentioned. In FY2, I had 1 day a week, unless I was on night shifts or on annual leave, to be working in a community primary care network hub. It's, for those who are not aware, a community PCN, if you will. It's a collaboration between GP practices in the neighborhood to provide services in addition to what a GP service provides. So it's not quite a GP practice, because I also had a GP rotation. So it's separate from that. So 1 day a week, I would spend visiting care homes to do like a comprehensive geriatric assessment. I would shadow the children's well-being team to interact with school children and learn about safeguarding. I also shadowed the social prescribing team, who were dealing with lots of sort of people where English is not their first language, so helping them navigate things like English ESOL classes or immigration. So a lot of these things, but this is very unique to my experience. So not to say that this is something you will get as part of this program, but I think for me, being able to view medicine in a different light, sort of exploring the social determinants of health in the population that my hospital is serving, and the population I'm in, sort of the community, is rather deprived. And so you do see people from all walks of life navigating different complexities in their life, and you can see how those wider determinants of health have influenced their lifestyle choices that have brought them to hospital with the acute presentation of whatever, and how we as doctors usually treat that tip of the iceberg, but actually it's really quite beneficial to see that full patient journey. So I would urge you, if you're on the Enhance Explore, to really try and appreciate that full patient journey, whether you're going into GP, radiology, surgery, whichever specialty in the future. These sort of generalist skills and that mindset would help you provide more holistic care to your patients. In terms of the difference between Explore and Enable, as I mentioned earlier, Enable is a program that all foundation doctors can be a part of. It's self-directed learning, so you should be able to access the learning resources online, the textbook, the workbooks. If you just type in Enhanced Program NHS England, that should bring you to the website, and you should be able to get an open Athens login to get access to all that. You can work through the workbooks at your own pace. You can discuss with your educational and clinical supervisor what opportunities are available within your rotation to fulfill some of those learning outcomes. You can fill out some of the forms to evidence engagement, upload it onto Horus, and it's just to say Enhance Enable is not a mandatory program in the sense that it's not something that will determine whether you pass your ARCP at the end of the year. This is meant to complement your 9-to-5 clinical training. It is to evidence that sort of out-of-the-box thinking, if you will. And that certificate at the end of the program is sort of an extra bonus, if you will, that you can take along with you. But yes, so I think that's the main difference.
Okay, so in answer to some of the questions, you don't have to. The Enhance Explore is part of usually a foundation priority program. People will have been appointed to that who are just about to start their foundation program in a week or so's time, will have been appointed to that. For those of you who are going to apply, you can apply via the foundation priority programs, in most cases for Foundation Explore programs, if that is something you want to do. In terms of the Enhance, Enable, that is something anyone in England can do. As Jeffe has said, the materials are available on the NHS England website. If you put Enhance, Enable, as I have just done, into a search engine of your choice, you will find on the NHS England website all the materials, and it's something you can do, and I would heartily recommend it. As I said, I think they're skills that all doctors should have, and it's a great opportunity to think perhaps a bit more widely about your practice as a doctor, as opposed to just the patient who's sitting in front of you. That patient is really, really important, but so it is also really important to think about the health of the population, the health of our planet, and your own health as well. So that's the main thing about Enable. Another question that's come in is a very big one. What are the key challenges in medical education and training over the next few years? Well, I'd be interested in a brief answer from Jeffe, Dasha and Harriet about that. What are the challenges that they see around training and education? But I'll start off by saying it's always a challenge to keep medical education and training firstly relevant and up to date. So, for instance, one of the big challenges we've got in the next few years is about how artificial intelligence will affect practice as a doctor, how it will affect medical education, how it will affect exams, how it will affect recruitment. And those are big picture sort of items. And there's lots of that going on. And indeed, the advances in medicine that go on from day to day. My specialty, I'm a diabetes consultant, and the advances in diabetes treatment just over the last 5 or 10 years have been absolutely huge. And to keep up to date with that is really important. I think on a wider view, what I would refer you back to is something called Modernising Medical Careers, which was a bit of a difficult time for medical education and training in 2005, and it underwent an independent inquiry chaired by Professor John Took from UCL at the time. And he made a really interesting observation, which has always stuck with me and something I quote all the time. And his very first recommendation was that workforce, education, and the service to patients are completely interdependent. And that if you change one of them, you change all of the others. And that's something we always need to keep in mind. So changes in the service, such as advances in diabetes treatment, will therefore have to change education, and indeed has changed our workforce. And we keep going round in that circle all the time. What we are often guilty of, I think, is thinking about those three things, workforce, service, and education, as being independent. And I do hear that from resident doctors. They talk about service provision as if it's totally independent to their learning. Yet the education bit. Yet you've heard from Jeff A, Dasha, and Harriet about all the things that you do as part of your work that you also learn from. The three things are absolutely interdependent. Always keep that in mind. And that will always be a challenge to us, so that when changes are made on a national level to healthcare, it will affect education and it will affect our workforce. So that's a sort of much higher level answer. So I suppose the biggest challenge for someone like me is trying to look into my virtual crystal ball and guess what are the changes that are going to happen in healthcare that will then impact on education. Got a couple of minutes left, but I'd be interested in the views of Dasha. What do you think? What are the biggest challenges to medical education and training?
I think there's plenty of changes going on. I think Mike has touched upon some of the things I was going to talk about. These are turbulent times. There is lots of change. I'm sure we all read about the postgraduate medical training review that has taken place. So I don't want to almost kind of sit and look into this crystal ball because we don't really know what will happen. There has been the review. We have fed into it as foundation doctors. We organised as the UKFPO kind of a listening event. So we had all the foundation reps feed into it and give kind of provide the voices of the foundation doctors and their experiences. And I think one thing we did hear there was that people did enjoy the foundation programs and that people enjoyed the broad range of rotations because it provides this wide base for which people can rotate through and learn. There are the big three shifts that we can always, of course, talk about, but I'll save it for a different time. I think what Mike touched upon, and I would have probably spoke about more, was kind of the balance of, as he said, education, service provision, and I guess the workforce as well. And it is a balance, and something that we worked on with Jeff A was actually kind of increasing learning opportunities. So there's been a lot of change and push, and you'll probably come across it. If you haven't, again, reach out to us, we can support you on it. But it's how do we kind of increase your learning? And for example, just not being on the wards all the time, but actually going to clinics, going to theatres, learning more and kind of changing that perspective and being more involved from all the circles. And as Mike mentioned, shadowing different people, being involved with different members and different healthcare professionals in different levels. So it's those are kind of the things. And how do we balance that with the service provision? So it's being
good answer. A few more questions have come in, and we've not got long, so we will try and answer some of them. Can I ask how structured is scheduled CPD time? I think you mean self-development time, SDT time, which is now in Northern Ireland, England, I think Wales. I have SDT built into my rota for my first rotation. I'm interested how to spend this time. Is working from home encouraged? Harriet, can you answer how you've used your SDT time, self-development time in your foundation program?
Of course. So for us, most of my rotations, it was scheduled as yours has been. For us, majority of the time I have been asked to actually work on site, which is now being under review and potentially might change. And it is different at different hospitals and different rotations. The reason why I have sometimes been asked to work on site is if there is low staffing, they could potentially pull me in on short notice. And also the SET time should also be focused on making sure you are working on your portfolio, on your self-development, making sure you're attending clinics, extracurricular activities to make sure you progress as a doctor. What it shouldn't be is you being at home having an extra day of annual leave, which I think some people might misinterpret the first time that they get their rota. So the things that I've been doing on my SET time, I've been working my audit. So as I'd mentioned previously, I did a national audit looking into the experiences of deaf and hard of hearing workers. I'd be working on my portfolio. I make sure that my course, as I'd mentioned, is up to date. it's really a good opportunity to make sure you're booking your meetings, booking your time in to be able to get everything done that you have scheduled that needs to be done away from those clinical activities, to really ensure that you as a doctor can progress and meet all of the things that you need to meet. That aspect of it is, for example, if you're in your surgery rotation, you're really passionate about surgery, it can be a time when you can go into the theatres and just focus on what the surgeons are doing, have that more one-on-one direct kind of consultation and insight into that aspect, as opposed to being there as a doctor that has to be there because of it's scheduled on the rota for them to be there. Equally, if you're someone like me that surgery is not for, you can spend your time in clinics or just working on a different area from that perspective too. So yes, it is sometimes scheduled. If it's not scheduled, you still do have that time available in your rotation. Please just make sure you speak to your rota coordinators and your consultants, and they will be able to help schedule that time in for you appropriately too.
Thank you, Harriet. An excellent answer. And I can only reiterate, you're absolutely right. It's not extra time. It's not extra annual leave. It's paid. It's time you're paid to work. It's something that was introduced a few years ago to try and help foundation program doctors, and has now been widely adopted in specialty training as well. But it is exactly that. It's time for, as its name suggests, it's time for self-development as a doctor. It's not just free time, and it's time for you to complete your portfolio requirements, to talk to your supervisors, or as Harriet says, go on and do other opportunities such as going to clinic or theatre or something else. But it's not extra leave, and that is very, very important. Okay, and Jeff A, a question: if I didn't get into an FPP or an SFP, how best can I approach getting involved in research? I really want to get involved in research, but I'm not sure where to start.
Oh, I would say I don't know if I'm the right person to answer this question, but because I've not always been into research as a medical student, but I think in foundation training, I sort of stumbled into it because I was quite interested in radiology. And so I spent quite a lot of time going into the department just to speak to one of the radiologists, ask to see if there are any QI projects for me to get involved with. And that was how they asked me if I wanted to get in on the case report, which is, I know, not the most robust form of research projects. But nonetheless, I do feel like that's usually how most research opportunities happen within foundation training. And just to say, it's got nothing to do with me being an enhanced foundation trainee or me being on a specialized foundation program. It is purely just being proactive and just showing up, and people, if they've worked with you on various little projects, inevitably they will encourage you or get you roped into things like research, as this is something that not only foundation trainees have to get involved with, but throughout specialty training as well. So think of it as a win-win situation for everyone. Certainly as a foundation trainee, I'll be honest, you would be doing most of the manual labor in research projects because you are pretty much starting out from the beginning. And I feel like that is part of the learning experience. And I think that's how you learn. And as you become more senior, you might take more of a lead on these projects. But to me, I think once again, it's all about keeping an open mind, staying curious. And for me, I think that was perfect for me, as I didn't have much prior research experience.
To be honest with you, even the most professorish professor has lots of manual work to do and lots of mundane work to do. There is, in all of our jobs, there is stuff that is just things you have to do. And it's not like it's always portrayed in the media, but it's still a very fulfilling job being a doctor, and it's a very fulfilling job being an academic doctor. The most important thing is to take the opportunities when they come, and don't let them pass you by. Don't hesitate. If you want some research, and if you want something in a specific specialty or area, if someone gives you that opportunity, don't hesitate. Don't and ah. Don't say I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks' time, because that opportunity will go. And that has always been the case and will always be the case. And things will sort of land in your lap. Take them. Take the opportunity. And it is really, really important. A lot of this stuff is quite opportunistic. It is quite about being in the right place at the right time. But when you are in the right place, make it the right time and take that opportunity. Really, really important. I'm going to close there now. It's 3 minutes to 7. It's been a really good hour. I'd like to hugely thank Harriet for taking her time and for being a fantastic rep for KSS, for truly representing doctors in the KSS, and also her brilliant project about hard of hearing healthcare professionals, which she's presented at least 2 foundation program meetings. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to Dasha and Jeff A for just being brilliant UKFPO fellows this year. It's been fantastic working with them. We've got 2 new fellows starting in a couple of weeks' time, and they've got big shoes to fill. I'd like to really thank the UKFPO team. They do a huge amount of work in the background of these webinars, making them go as smoothly as they can. Any ums, ahs, or pauses are entirely the speakers and not the UKFPO team. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I hope it's been really useful. If you've been watching on a recording, I hope it's been useful. We've got lots more webinars coming up over the next academic year, and I look forward to seeing you at more of them in the future. Have a good evening.